Hello everybody and welcome back to the World AI Only free-for-all. This is part 8. At least I hope this is part 8. The last episode, Mabanzo Congo, which was a city-state, was annexed by Kilwa. Kilwa has waged war on the Soviet Union and Soviet Africa is under siege. Going north, Berlin is in the hands of France. And what else has transpired? Oh yeah, America has been wiped out of the game. Shoshone have taken control of the eastern seaboard and promptly put all of those Americans into reservations, as I mentioned earlier. And going west, let's see what else has transpired. Oh yes, of course, Korea is at war with the Soviet Union. We'll see how able the Soviet Union is to... how able they are to defend their own territory, I should say, as they do have Great War infantry, but most of their units are scattered about, mainly over here in the Caucasus region. It looks like the city of Yerevan is under fire from the Soviet Union. I do believe they are allied with Kilwa, so that makes sense. Right, so without further ado, I believe that is, by and large, the gist of what happened last episode. Of course, Korea is very much undefended at this point. They're leaving all this territory over here very vulnerable. Perhaps Persia might make a move on their territory, but the vast Persian army has migrated. They've migrated to the west, away from the border of Saigon and Hanoi. They are heading west. Perhaps they're heading north. Perhaps everybody in this episode of the World AI Free-for-All Deathmatch series, they're all going to be ganging up on the Soviet Union. We'll see how able Stalin is at defending his own territory in the largest of patriotic wars ever to hit the Soviet Union. And of course, also in the last episode, Germany has set up 2 new cities in central/eastern Siberia. They are, of course, Essen and Frankfurt. It's almost cute how Germany still has these tiny little cannons. They don't have artillery yet. As you guys can see, Frankfurt, very outdated equipment that they're using. And the war over here is going pretty well. Big news within the first 5 minutes of this episode. Korea has completed the Manhattan Project, which brings Korea the second nuclear power in the world after Persia, which is scary. And I think you guys can correct me on this, but I think in the game of Civilization, if 2 powers have nuclear weapons, I believe they are less likely to attack each other. Kind of like a real-world example would be the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. Of course, this is a doctrine that was espoused by the United States in the Cold War. It was basically, it went a little bit like this. The Soviet Union possessed a massive stockpile of nuclear weapons. The United States possessed a massive stockpile of nuclear weapons. Both countries were hostile towards each other, but to attack, or to go to war rather, would mean using these nuclear weapons, and to use these nuclear weapons would bring about an apocalypse for both countries. So really, both of the nuclear weapons, both of the nuclear stockpiles in both countries during the Cold War kept the world at peace. And I know that's perhaps a little bit of a controversial view on the subject. I know that nuclear weapon proliferation is a very important debate in the world today. You know, people trying to get rid of their nuclear weapons, but it's kind of funny considering the United States wants countries to reduce their nuclear stockpile, while the United States carries a very large amount of nuclear weapons itself. So a bit interesting. Of course, going over here to the west, Hamburg is under siege by France. Very interesting. Hamburg should fall next turn, which will mean that Germany is reduced to Siberian exile status over here in the Central Asian steppe. Another turn of events has transpired. Yerevan has been conquered by the Soviet Union. This is totally historically accurate. I was kind of worried I wasn't going to be able to go on a ramble here. Yerevan, of course, the capital of Armenia. Armenia was a part of the Soviet Union, the Armenian Soviet Socialist Republic. And this also means that, somewhat ironically, Chechnya is a part of Russia. So, yeah, hopefully my comment section doesn't get too inflamed with this assertion. Right. So Hamburg, part of France now, apparently. So Königsberg, Kaliningrad, whatever you want to call it, It is a part of France. Pretty weird, honestly, how France controls all of this territory. It's almost reminiscent of a certain Napoleon. And I'm not referring to Napoleon Dynamite. I am referring to the Emperor Napoleon, who actually wasn't French. I'm not sure if I've talked about this in previous videos. Napoleon is from Corsica. And Corsica, a little bit earlier before Napoleon was born, I think Napoleon was born like in the middle of the 18th century. Of course, he rose to power at the start of the 19th century. So he was somewhere around there in the 18th century. I think he was like 1760 or 1770 he was born there. Maybe a little bit later, maybe like 1780. He was born in Corsica. And Corsica was actually a part of Genoa up until somewhat recently at that point in time. Of course, France had taken control of that area through a treaty. But when Napoleon was born, he very much felt, not Italian, I guess Corsican would be a better word for it. Of course, Corsica has its own interesting and unique culture, and I've been exposed to it quite a bit. I think I've mentioned in the past, my girlfriend's family is Corsican, so I get to meet her parents who are from Corsica, and it's very interesting, very different. So enough of that blabbering. Hamburg, part of France now. France stretches on east into Central and Eastern Europe. Now France has a border with the Soviet Union, and this is also reminiscent of Napoleon's march in Russia. Perhaps France will get a big ego, as it sometimes does, and decide that attacking Russia in the wintertime is a good idea. That is never a good idea, and it never will be a good idea, so potential enemies of Russia, take note. Right, so over here in Central Asia, the Soviet Union has done an amazing job at defending their territory. In fact, Soviet infantry and Soviet cavalry have pushed back the Koreans so much that Korea is only in possession of 2 artillery pieces. And now the Koreans are heading back to their home. They have had enough, and I guess they want to go back home, eat some more dogs. Oh geez, that was a bit offensive, wasn't it? Sorry about that. I know not all Koreans do eat dogs, but I think it's popular in North Korea and South Korea alike. Of course, the taboo of eating dogs is a bit too much for me, but somewhat, I guess hypocritically, I would totally be down to eat some horse. I hear horse is really good. They did in France, and I can't wait to try some. They call it viande de cheval, and they apparently have their own type of like horse meat restaurants. Not restaurants, that's a bad word. I guess butcher is a good term in English to describe these types of places. Of course, these butchers only specialize in horse meat. So, news. Random city-state Vancouver has declared war on Denmark. Not Denmark, Germany. Watch that. So yeah, this is a bit strange considering Vancouver is in modern-day British Columbia, and they've decided that they want to send some troops over to Essen and Frankfurt, which are in Central Asia. So that'll be a bit interesting. Kizil, who is also in Central Asia, has declared war on Africa. That doesn't make any sense. And also on the Shoshone. Very interesting. And they've also declared war on the United States. What exactly happened? What happened was that the Soviet Union allied them. I guess that makes more sense now that we think of it. Right. So, that being said, look at this military buildup outside of Ekbatana. This is a bit ridiculous, considering the world police in this specific game is most certainly not the United States. It is, in fact, Persia. So, Persia Proletarian is rapidly at work constructing railroads to connect their cities. Railroads, of course, in Civilization do increase production in all cities that they are connected to. And, yeah, I guess Persia is not immune to these really wonky rail lines that they've got throughout their country. The AI is notorious in Civilization for making roads that loop around like geometric patterns outside of some sort of LSD acid trip. Anyways, enough of that. Let's go to South America, where everything seems to be going swimmingly, as normal. I try to include South America in all my videos. I know, like, not a lot happens with Venezuela. They're still kind of lagging behind in technology, but at least they don't have any musketmen anymore, which is good. They've upgraded to riflemen. That's great. Starting to send some archaeologists out, and they also have control of the, I guess you'd call these like the Leeward Islands in English. Yeah. Anyways, let's go over to North America, which is firmly in the control of the Shoshone tribe. The Shoshone are doing a great job at committing genocide. As the last episode, we saw that this city over here, Ely, had a population of 3, now it has a population of 1. Of course, my home state of Texas is being depopulated as well. Houston, a very meager 3 citizen level over here in the west. And a depopulation is also not unique to central North America. Of course, Washington, the capital of the once independent state of the United States, is over here. And I guess once independent is a bad word, a misnomer, considering the United States lives on in Philadelphia, over here in Fairbanks. We'll see how they do up here. Because it looks like there are some samurai that want to get into the border. Of course, getting into the United States is a bit difficult. Even if you are a samurai with a sword, you're going to need better qualifications than that to get into Fortress America. So let's go to the west, where we've got some fighting outside of German Siberia. Of course, German Siberia, Frankfurt is the new capital of Germany, very fittingly located over here in Central Asia. And, you know, I don't want to do any Nazi jokes, but I mean, if Germany was to set out some settlers right after around this date over here, 20 years after World War II, they should have sent them over here to South America. Plenty of nice fertile land over here, like, you know, Argentina and Chile for them to go to. Of course, Brazil's already taken, so all those German Brazilians will have to go somewhere else. Soviet troops are in French Poland. I don't really know why. Perhaps they have military access. And look at this, there's way too many freaking English privateers. England, of course, issuing letters of marque like crazy over here outside of London. I have no idea where they're going to be sending all these privateers, but we'll see. Novosibirsk. Oh, wow. You know, I've been neglecting Soviet Africa. New Sibir, as it is known in English. Thank you very much for whoever commented on that. Has been taken by the Khomeini Sultanate. Of course, the city of Krasnoyarsk is still very much in Stalin's hands. Right, so Korea has made peace with Stalin and made peace with Shoshone and all those city-states. And they've also denounced Korea, too. So apparently Korea and Russia are no longer friends. Of course, in real life, North Korea has not really a trade agreement. They have got a little, like, trade center area on the Russian border. Of course, North Korea borders Russia, for those of you who were not in the know. But I don't really think that Russia could be considered an ally of North Korea. That's basically just China, and at this point, that's a bit shaky at best. I'm looking around now, as I'm rambling, to see if this peace treaty between the Soviets and the Koreans necessitated any change in territory. It doesn't look like it did. So that's good, I guess, for both parties. Of course, now we've got some Stalinist land ships. Of course, there's like the proto-tanks. I would be interested to see when the Soviet KV-1s are going to hit the field. You'd think that the tanks for the Soviet Union would be, you know, the KV-1 or the KV-3 or some other sort of World War II Soviet tank that was mass-produced in that particular war, the Great Patriotic War, as it's known in Russian, of course. So let's go over here to the last remaining theater between the Soviet Union and Kilwa. Of course, they are still at war. Now, interestingly enough, Washington and Germany are at war. This is really weird. Also, interestingly enough, we're gonna go zoom over there too. I know that you guys might want to see Soviet Africa, but apparently even that overpowered unique ability that some of you guys have been mentioning failed to really save the Soviet Union from Kilwini's aggression. So let's go back to Siberia, or rather Alaska, where Japan and America are at war. That little samurai over here that was not able to get American citizenship has decided rather to just, you know, go through the border by force, perhaps. We'll see how this is handled. Of course, America in possession of some coal, very rare resource, gems, and lots of furs. So, best coats in the world, trivial fact, comes from Philadelphia over here in Alaska. So, good news. What I'm more flabbergasted about is that Germany has declared war on America too. I mean, really, Germany, you just got, you know, shit stomped by France, and now you're really willing to send your only military unit, which is a cannon, over to Washington. I mean, you guys should probably be banding together. You know, America, Denmark, Japan, Germany, all of these rump states with 1 to 3 cities, they really should be banding together to form an alliance, but they've not, so that's interesting. Of course, England, ready to rein in their former colony of America. Unfortunately for England, the eastern seaboard's already lost. There's no French or English and Indian War for them to be able to exploit and take back some territory. On that particular, what do I need right here? On that particular discussion, England always historically very much a proponent of the divide and conquer strategy. They've always been trying to divide you know, countries and factions between themselves so that they can exert their power. And I didn't realize it, but apparently Persia and Germany are at war. And this is so sad. I mean, we're about to see, really, the end of Germany. And I say that. I mean, they stand no chance. I mean, look at this. Persia's got 6 freaking things over here. They got an atomic bomb, for God's sakes. Germany with their little tiny cannon from like the 1700s over here. Yeah, it just does not stand a chance. We're going to be paying attention to Germany. Of course, the fall of Germany is very important for a myriad of reasons. We'll see if England is able to conquer Philadelphia or Japan or Germany. You know, my guess is that the United States will be able to defend itself. I mean, they've got 2 cannon themselves and some caravans. That's great. So let's go back over here, where Frankfurt has been conquered by the Persian Empire. It seems like Xerxes is up to no good, or rather Darius, sorry. Darius is up to no good. And God, this episode is full of violence. Check this out. Persia is at war with Venezuela. Venezuela is at war with the Shoshone. I gotta keep up with the amount of violence that's going on here. So in that regard, we're going to go back to Soviet Africa, which is almost post-Soviet Africa, as the last colony of the Soviet Union is about to fall to the Killarney Sultanate, assuming that the Killarney Sultanate can get their Swahili Great War infantry over there to capture the city. So over here in Venezuela, a lot of archaeologists. It's like freaking Indiana Jones over here. We got Swahili over here. I don't believe they're at war with Venezuela. In fact, I think they might be at war with the Shoshone. So the Shoshone are at war with Venezuela. This is going to be a very interesting thing. This may or may not dictate the future of both North and South America. If either the Venezuelans or the Shoshone are able to subjugate the other continent, we will see. Of course, there will be violence here in the city-state regions as La Venta is allied by Venezuela and under siege now by the Shoshone. My guess is that La Venta will be conquered by the Shoshone, bringing the Shoshone one step closer across this Mesoamerican land bridge towards South America. Let's go now over to the violence in Central Asia. I almost feel like a battle reporter or something like that. Like I feel like I'm on CNN or something talking about this, like a war journalist or something. Nothing really gone over here. Let's go check out Soviet Africa. Once again, Krasnoyarsk is under siege by Swahili artillery, and I never thought that a city with 77 defense, of course, Novosibirsk over here, Novosibirsk, would have been conquered. That's quite incredible, really, from a logistical standpoint. Of course, this area over here, these spheres of influence, Persia and Kilwa, will inevitably converge into a battle of its own, but enough of that. We're not really interested in that. And Persia is not really pressing the advantage into Germany. They definitely could. Of course, Germany is just having some fun putting riflemen in this lake over here. They're having a great time, kind of relaxing and bathing over here. I hear there's a German stereotype in Europe where German people go to other European countries like France and basically just go on their beaches, go on their spas, and it's like a stereotype that German people love to bath, and that's a good stereotype. It means that they're not dirty, so that's great. Of course, the French stereotype is a bit more negative. Before I went to France for the first time, I was told by my American friends, like, oh, make sure that you know, take pictures of all the women that, you know, don't shave their legs and that don't wear deodorant. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. There's no way that's true. And guess what? When I went to France, guess what wasn't true? That wasn't true. It's very much a stereotype. French people are very hygienic. They take showers, okay? They shave, they wear deodorant. That's a false stereotype. But I've heard that the Germans love the bath, so, you know, they probably are more into that type of scene. So, enough of my rambling. Let's check out over here with the Shoshone, over here in Havana, or sorry, Kamutaga, Shoshone, Cuba. It's under attack, and it's under attack by Venezuelan aircraft. And, interesting story, despite the fact that the Shoshone have conquered all of this land, these great tracts of land, they are technologically inferior to the Venezuelans. And here I was rapping on the Venezuelans for being technologically behind when they actually have a modern air force. So, depending on what unit they send to take Kamutaga, of course, frigates cannot capture cities in Civilization for no apparent reason. If they send, for instance, their privateers, or perhaps they've got a caravel somewhere, they could capture the city. Very interesting. So we'll be keeping our eyes on there, and of course we'll be keeping our eyes on Krasnoyarsk. Going to the east, let's keep our eye out on Essen. Excuse me. Very interestingly, over here in eastern Siberia / the Alaskan Theater, samurai are battling riflemen. It's almost like that horrendous Tom Cruise movie, The Last Samurai. And I mean, I don't want to say that was a horrendous movie. I liked The Last Samurai, but come on, Tom Cruise. That was just a bad pick, man. Like, so you could have picked anybody else for that role, and you picked Tom Cruise. You know, he's better in like Battlefield Earth and like Scientologist shell movies. Anyways, enough of the celebrity hate. Let's go over to here to Kamutaga, Shoshone, Cuba. Nothing really special going on over here. Of course, very riskily, we've got a Venezuelan cargo ship heading between La Venta and Venezuela. It's only a matter of time before the Shoshone ironclad pillages that trade node. What exactly is happening over here with the Swahili and the Persians and the Venezuelans? Let's go and hit next turn to see what's happening. Because I think that somebody's at war with somebody over here. I don't really understand. Right. So, Soviet Africa. Unfortunately, Soviet Africa is no longer. Stalin has no colonies in Africa anymore, and in fact, he must be pissed. I mean, there's no way that he's not pissed to lose such incredible luxury resources and strategic, really whatever the reason Europeans decide to colonize Africa is in the first place. Let's go north to the Soviet Union, where I didn't say it earlier, but France and the Soviet Union are at war. It seems like Napoleon, I mean Charles de Gaulle, has decided to invade Russia, and this is a bad idea for a multitude of reasons, including the fact that the Soviet Union has a citadel outside of its border between Hamburg, and of course the citadel combined with the Iron Curtain unique ability is just going to shred French units apart. Within the first turn of their war, Berlin has been reduced to rubble, and I say that the Soviet Union would probably be in a very good advantage here. Of course, they've got tongue twister over here. They've got an air force, complete with Tupolev bombers and Su, whatever they're called. France does not have an air force, and this is going to be really a bad thing for France. And you know what? I was really hoping France would be the preeminent European military power. Of course, they do own vast tracts of European land, but that doesn't really mean anything when they are so behind in Air Force technology and technology in general. They don't even have an ideology yet. So nothing's going on in Siberia, nothing's going on over here in Central Asia. Let's move on to the North American theater, where nothing seems to be going on. Of course, I'm not really ending my turns as fast as I usually do, considering there's like 17 wars going on at the same time. I want equal time for everything. Let's go to Europe, where the Soviet Union and France are at war. This will be probably the most interesting theater that we have going on right now. In fact, if the Soviet Union is able to push west into France, it will certainly make them contender for, the victor for this particular series, probably tied with Persia in terms of the amount of power that they are able to project on the rest of the world. Of course, they continue to bomb Berlin, while France is blockading Soviet Scandinavia. I love that term, Soviet Scandinavia. For all my Baltic viewers, I'm sorry for the offense that might cause you. And Finland, Finns too. Don't forget about the Winter War. Right, so Korea and Japan are at war, which means that Japan is about to be obliterated. Very much unfortunately for that. Of course, we do have some Japanese workboats over here. Hopefully they're not, killing any whales. Of course, that's a big problem nowadays. Overfishing and overkilling of whales in the part of Japan. God, there's so many wars that are going on right now. This is like ridiculous. Japan's at war with Persia and Swahili Sultanate. Like, why can't we have world peace? I mean, you guys have nuclear weapons, for God's sakes. Potokello also jumping on Japan. Like, poor Japan. Really doesn't stand much of a chance here. Of course, in Persia proper, we've got helicopters and paratroopers. That is so incredibly threatening. I mean, look at these. These are pretty cool animations. I mean, you gotta admit, like, this is pretty interesting, pretty nifty. Persia, of course, rocking machine guns and helicopter gunships when certain civs that shall not be named are Denmark rocking crossbows, and over here in Peasant Island. Yeah, how the mighty have fallen. Back over here in Europe, France, of course, holding on tenaciously to their own territory, where Ragusa is under siege by the Soviet Union. Ragusa, of course, in modern-day Dubrovnik, Croatia. No longer known as Ragusa. I believe Ragusa was a client state of Venice, back when the Republic of Venice was actually, its own state, when it was its own power. Kind of like, I guess, an Italian colony, you can consider it, over there on the Aegean Sea. Of course, like I said, today it's controlled by Croatia, a Slavic country. But back then, I believe Ragusa, main language was Italian. Very strategic location for a multitude of reasons. Sorry to just keep going on these rambles. Ragusa, in the time of the Middle Ages, for example, was a power broker, or a trade broker, between the Ottoman Empire, so like the East, and the Christian West. And by what I mean by that is that Ragusa had trade agreements with the Ottoman Empire, and it had trade agreements with Western Europe, aka Christian Europe. And this is at a time where the fate of Europe, or rather the fate of Christianity in Europe, was uncertain. Of course, the Ottoman Empire was sprawling. I mean, they were outside of the gates of Vienna at a certain point, so being able to trade with the Ottoman Empire was a big boon for a lot of Western European countries. And of course, they're not going to directly trade with the kebab itself, as that would be considered, scandalous or heretical, I guess you could say it. I mean, the Pope would probably crucify you if you did that. So, in turn, what ended up happening was that the Ottomans set up their goods over here in Ragusa, and the Christians bought these goods, knowing full well they came from the Ottomans, but because they were in Ragusa, they weren't dealing with any Turks. And likewise, goods from Western Europe would be funneled through Ragusa into Constantinople, and thus into the Arab world. So that's a pretty interesting tidbit of knowledge, or I guess history, for those of you who are curious. Let's go over here to Central Asia. Nothing's happening, of course. And Philadelphia is still hanging on very tenaciously to their own territory. Of course, Korea is now perhaps mobilizing to take on Japan. They have a very much a dearth of any type of military unit. I'm going over here, of course, to Europe, where the violence is most pronounced. And this is probably the Cold War. I mean, I'd like to think this is like autocracy versus order, but of course, for those of you who remember my previous episode, France does not have an ideology, so I guess that's a bit accurate for the French itself. I guess kind of like a microcosm for French ideological thought here in the 21st century. They are very apathetic, they don't really swing each way. I mean, of course, perhaps the most well-known French political stereotype we have in the West, and by West I mean United States, is that they have this fanatical right-wing group called the Front National. But I mean, that's not like the main political party in France. It's just like a really small group. In fact, I'm sure a lot of super right-wing conservatives in America would love to be friends with some of these right-wing Front National people. Of course, Marine Le Pen is the president of this movement, and the French have affectionately nicknamed her Marie Le Penis. Le Penis. I probably mispronounced that, I'm sorry, but penis is the same in both French and English. Interesting tidbit. Of course, a little bit less historical than most of my rambles. But anyways, let's continue east into Asia, where nothing's really happening. Nothing too important anyways. I've been neglecting to go over here to North America, where La Venta is absolutely under siege by the Shoshone. Mexico itself, or rather the Yucatan Peninsula, which looks more like a... not going to mention that. Looks more like that, is under siege by the Shoshone. Of course, Venezuela proper is doing pretty well. They're modernizing, albeit pretty slowly. But they have access to an air force, so that's better than most. We're going to end our turn here so we can watch La Venta fall here in slow motion. I say that. I mean, there's really no telling whether or not it will fall in this episode or the next episode. But the fact of the matter is that my time is running low here on this episode. I've got to wrap it up pretty soon. So after this episode, I'm going to do a quick overview, as I always do. And we'll see if La Venta falls. I mean, yeah, okay, well that was pretty obvious, I guess. La Venta has fallen. Of course, the world is becoming more and more, what's the word? I wanted to say, like, God, polarized? Yeah, that's the word, polarized. Sometimes I'm scrambling for those words and I can't come up with them, but La Venta, very much in the hands of the Shoshone. City-states everywhere are pretty upset, considering that the amount of city-states in the world is rapidly decreasing. Let's go over here into the mid-Atlantic Ocean, where there's a massive naval battle between the English and the English, as they seem to be losing men due to attrition. What the hell is this island doing over here? I think this might be like the Balearic or the Azores. No, not the Azores. Yeah, it might be the Azores. The Balearic Islands, of course, are over here somewhere. They're mainly just known as a party island nowadays, along with Ibiza. Sorry, my Spanish viewers, but you know it's true. Let's go over here to Europe, where England's got Landsknecht. Yeah, that makes zero sense whatsoever. Of course, Landsknecht is a German unit. Right, so Europe is totally peaceful. And by that I mean absolutely at war. In the next episode, it looks like France may or may not lose Hamburg to the Soviet Union. And of course, the Soviet Union will kick out all the French and Germans, bring in some Russians, and call it Kaliningrad, just like it is today. See, sometimes history repeats itself, and in this series you will find that history repeats itself quite often, as I've demonstrated in this episode. Soviet Armenia, right. And Sudan is also at war with Persia. It looks like a lot of different territory will be changing hands next episode, guys. Episode 9 hype, get ready for it. It'll be out very soon. Like I said, I'll be releasing these things every 2 days, so get ready for it. Of course, Korea now has an air force. The Soviet Union is... oh my god, I just realized. The Soviet Union is at war with Persia. This is, oof. This is going to be a really good next episode. So definitely stay tuned. We're going to go over here into the east, where nothing really happening over here. Looks like the samurai have fallen, much like in that mediocre Tom Cruise movie. Down here in this oceanic region, we still got some Korean turtle ships that are just kind of chilling outside the coast of whatever the hell this country is. Is this like Tuvalu or Samoa? God, I feel so bad for my oceanic viewers, like all 14 of you guys. I'm so sorry. I can't even do that right now. Oceania, obviously Australia is controlled by the Persians. And let's check out the Mid-Pacific, where there is a war between the Koreans and the Swahili Sultanate, who seem to be confused on where they are. I mean, Africa is, you know, just a few thousand kilometers to the east. Right, so I'm done rambling. Let's go see how safe our Roman submarine is. He's okay. I mean, he was detected by the Koreans the last episode, but they don't seem to be really paying him any mind anymore. Of course, Cape Town is an ally of Persia, and Persia's got some carriers. They're not packing any explosives like bombs or anything, but God knows where these guys are headed. They're probably headed over here to South America. Right, enough of this rambling. Take a good look at this complete mess of European geopolitical power mongering. Let's go take a look at the demographics. Oh, what a surprise! Persia is ahead in everything. I never seen this before. Of course, Vietnam has managed to be 0 in everything too, and actually has negative 4 million gold. That's right. Okay, let's go check out the score, where Persia once again is the leader with 1,600 imaginary video game points, and Shoshone are second in imaginary video game points. Or no, sorry, Stalin is the second. So the leaderboard right now is Persia number 1, Stalin number 2, Shoshone number 3, and Kilwa number 4. So guys, stay tuned for the next episode. Of course, this wouldn't be complete without me going to the ideological thingamajiggy. I think that's in, let's go to, no, it's culture, right. So, ideologies, the same as they were last time. Oh my God, Persia has 95 happiness. What? How is this possible? Well, it's okay. Well, autocracy is facing dissidence. In fact, they're even facing civil resistance in Venezuela and England, where apparently King Elizabeth over here is enacting her reign with very much an iron-fisted rule. I guess the monarchy in England is about to flip over to communism. We'll see in the next episode. So once again, guys, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for episode 9. Europe should go to hell then, and like the rest of the world. So stay tuned, and thank you very much for watching.